Okay. Hello everybody, how's it going? I've come to do a talk alright, I'll get started. I've got just notes I'm going to read from my iPhone basically because I'm super professional and I kind of keep it dead profesh by reading my iPhone, so please bear with me. I'm also recording it for my YouTube channel, so I'm just going to explain a little bit about who I am and then what I do and those kind of things. So my name is Dan, but my brand is TheAspieWorld, which is this kind of thing I've got on my chest, which I always wear my own merch because there's any opportunity to self-promote, obviously. But basically, I was diagnosed at 26 years old with Aspergers syndrome, ADHD, OCD, but I've also previously had dyslexia, so that was quite an interesting experience, actually. So I actually make content for the internet, so I make content on YouTube, make content on Facebook, make content on Twitter, Instagram, actually any social media platform you can think of. And the idea of the content is to kind of empower people into insight into life and living with an autism spectrum condition, but then also show an adult perspective of it and how people can help encourage themselves to be more empowered, fulfilled, and enlightened in themselves, so that they don't feel so kind of negative. Because a lot of the stuff I found when I was searching for information on autism for adults when I was first diagnosed was very mundane and boring, and it was kind of really depressing and negative. So so like I said, my YouTube channel, I've won 2 awards with my YouTube channel. I've got 100,000 subscribers on it, which is a lot of people. I'm also a best-selling author in 3 languages, despite being dyslexic, which I'll get into in a minute. And also, like I say, I upload on multimedia platforms. And the reason I do what I do is because I want to send a positive message out constantly, because I feel there's far too much negativity in our industry, and especially across the board. I feel there's a lot of negativity. People kind of feel depressed when they see, and this is quite interesting. This is what this whole talk's about. When they hear autism diagnosis, everyone thinks, okay, what can't I do? What am I not going to be able to do? What am I not going to have access to? What does this disable me from doing? Rather than saying, oh, how good am I at something? How good am I going to be at this? Wow, now I'm feeling empowered. What am I good at? Why am I so unique? Nobody sees those kind of qualities, which I find quite fascinating. We always look at negative. So I do this talk kind of being awesomely autistic, which is what I'm trying to cram into maybe 20 minutes. So we can have some Q&A if you guys want to. So how autism can be used as more of a superpower to springboard somebody into doing something, because one of the things that I find most fascinating is that everybody knows somebody with a spectrum disorder that they will never say it's not completely negative, right? So you don't just have someone who's got an autism spectrum condition and it's the most negative thing ever. Most of the time you'd be like, oh, they're the best Minecraft player I've ever seen in my life. They love Lego. They love science. They can name every single kind of taxon of any bug in the world, and all that kind of stuff is very interesting. And it's what I kind of use as the angle to say, well, let's not focus on all the negative stuff. And the reason it's negative in the first place is because when you go to a hospital, you never really go to a hospital to do something awesome. You never go yeah, I'm going to go to a hospital today to get diagnosed with something. Nobody ever goes, well, here's £1 million. It's always you go to the hospital and it's always really negative. It's always this kind of negative input put on stuff when you go to a clinical environment. And it's the same with getting a diagnosis of autism. You go to a clinical environment and say, look, I'm sorry, your kid has this. They're never really congratulations, your kid is on the spectrum, what an awesome opportunity it is, which is really bizarre, and I find this is fascinating. So this is what I talk about, is those kind of things. So one of the things that I feel is what do I mean when I say being awesomely autistic? Why is it an awesome thing, or why can't it be an awesome thing? And it's because it can be empowered because of people have things like hyperfocus. I love hyperfocus on something, when you have an obsessive interest. I know anybody in here who knows anyone on the spectrum will have an obsessive interest, that person will have an obsessive interest. So when I was a kid, it was more Pokemon, because I was a kid in the 90s and Pokemon was huge, and I learned the entire Pokedex. I loved it, and then Pokemon was my life for pretty much all of my young years. And then when I became to a teenager, it was still kind of Pokemon. But then it moved into VR, robots, electronics, and I got a degree in chemistry now, and things, it changes. But having that ability to hyper focus on something gives you a head and shoulders above anybody else. So say you're a graphic artist, your kids are really good at drawing and it becomes a graphic artist, but they'll know more about graphical art than most people who've got a degree in graphical art, because they get obsessed over it and they can hyper-focus on it, and they can really get into that kind of they get into that mindset, they really click with the idea of it. So that again is something super, super awesome. The attention to detail is just our dedication to detail is amazing. I love Spot the Difference, I'm really good at it, but a lot of people don't recognize small details and things. And if you put it in this way, somebody who is on the spectrum may not be the best cashier in a store or the best barman, because they may not have the best conversation to be had with somebody on what do they call it, small talk, which is on weather, and I think that's it, isn't it, small talk? But they wouldn't be able to have those conversations with those people, but they would be able to look for bug errors in issues in codes of lines of code in computing. So then they'd be great for Microsoft. So it's not looking at what they can't do, it's looking at what they can do. And something I always I always kind of use this comparison is like, when people dwell on the stuff, oh, my kid's never going to be able to talk to, like a neurotypical kid, won't be able to talk to his friends in a certain way, won't be able to make friends in this like traditional way. And I say, well, there's nothing wrong with that, and I wouldn't really focus on it. It's kind of like if you're not a gourmet chef or a cordon bleu chef, you don't wake up in the morning saying, oh my God, I wish I was a cordon bleu chef. No, some people are good at some things, some people aren't good at some things. We never dwell on the things that we're not good at, because you never get out of bed, would you? Because all the things you can't do. Oh, I'm not an astronaut, oh my goodness, what's wrong with me? Nothing, you're just not good at it. So that is the comparison that I try and make between like what people are good at and what people aren't good at, and why we put so much negativity on it. So, yeah, so in terms of like, people on the spectrum, what they're good at, obviously, again, problem solving is another amazing thing, and overcoming stuff. So put it this way, so with problem solving in my life, like I left school with no GCSEs because I was undiagnosed in high school, but they also knew it was an issue, but it was the 90s and it was rubbish, and anybody who went to any school in the 90s, it was pants, and they couldn't really figure out how to help, and my learning type was just like forgotten about, and it was just like, yeah, he's just going to fail at everything and blah blah blah. So I left school, no qualifications, super dyslexic, my reading and writing is very difficult, but I managed to actually get a book out, and the book became a bestseller. It was bestseller in the United States, bestseller in the UK, actually got published in 3 languages, and also is out on an audiobook. And the interesting thing about it was because I was able to problem solve, like, okay, I can't write a book because like I'm no good at actually spelling, I can't like, perform like the sentences in a certain way, but I can talk like a beast right now, right here I'm talking to you. So I found a ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter sat there and listened to me talk at her for 8 hours, and then we were able to compile the book from that. So that's kind of like problem solving, finding a way around things, and this is what people on the spectrum are really, really good at, right? Another thing is that then I realized when I was in high school, when I was in primary school and high school, I was rubbish at, I thought I was rubbish at maths, but it was the way that was getting taught to me. But then I realized I really enjoyed math when it was given to me in a chemistry format. So in a degree level of chemistry, I'd really excelled. So obviously I have a degree in chemistry, and being able to put myself in that situation, then I realized I love maths rather than thinking it was this thing that I couldn't do. So it's all to do with like how that person interacts with the concept at hand, and how you problem solve around the issues that you present yourself with. So I find that really, really interesting. Oh, and I'm also, just so you guys know, I'm also a multi-musician. One of the ambitions I had, and this is again down to hyper-focus. Like if you think about how people can't achieve things, but they can if they align themselves hyper-focused with that thing, is I always wanted to have music out in Japan. I don't know why. I think it's because Japan has like a big music market. I think it's the largest in the world now, next to China, for alternative music. So I released a record, knew nobody in Japan, and then about 8 to 9 months after that, we got a deal in Japan, and we got the record out in Japan. We got to number 5 in the HMV chart in Japan, which was just an incredible achievement for something that I didn't, I can't speak a word of Japanese, so that was quite interesting. So what people do when they hear the term autism, right? They think of it's like, sorry, let me back up. My job is to try and change the way people perceive autism, how they see it and how they interact with it, because in the wording a starting point. So if you say someone's autistic, they say, oh, like Rain Man, and they have this horrible image of somebody sitting in a room rocking in the dark who won't be able to talk to anybody, which is completely untrue. It's just a small minority of people who probably may fit that demographic, but that's not everybody, and it's obviously a spectrum for a reason of being a spectrum. But what they never think of is when you say, oh, somebody's autistic, they never think of like Greta Thunberg or Dan Aykroyd or like Chris Peckham or Susan Boyle. You never think of somebody who's done amazing things and achieved things. That's not, they never say, they never highlight the autism in that point. They just say like these people are famous, but they never say that it's, they've got hyperfocus or they're really good at their ability because they're autistic. When you hear the word autism, it's always a negative shadowed thing. It's never something that's like super propelling and super awesome and super encouraging, which it should be now. I mean, it's changing a little bit. I know the National Autistic Society are kind of using Susan Boyle and things like Chris Peckham, and they're using this like celebrity ambassador program a little bit more. I'm working with them quite closely on things like that for content creation, and it is changing, but I think like you need a drastic kind of understanding of that, and a lot of that's going to come very, very soon, believe me. But yeah, so like I think that like if we align ourselves with the people or the role models that we see, like like Dan Aykroyd or Nikola Tesla or Albert Einstein or Greta Thunberg, they're doing amazing things in the world, and you think, oh my goodness. And we have to first align that first of all with the fact that they have a spectrum condition, right? And then that would just change everybody's perception straight away. But it's down to the media and how the media use it. But that's all it is really. But yeah, so the reason we focus on the negativity is because the media tell us something bad because it's sensational, isn't it? The TV never want to say it's a fantastic trait for somebody with an autism spectrum disorder, it's just sailed the world, battling climate change, and it's absolutely make progressive progress in the Western Hemisphere. They never say that. Like Greta Thunberg's getting crap from Donald Trump. That's all they want. They want sensationalism. They never tell you something good. Or they say, kid walked into a high school in America, shot a bunch of people, which happens a lot, and then they'll say, oh, he's got ADHD. Oh, he's on the spectrum. It's like, well, what on earth? Like, why do they throw that in there? Because they want to sensationalize something that makes it look like there's a negative. That's why they have, it's currently a disorder, and it's quite unusual terminology. And I understand why they use it, but it's kind of like you have to rock that idea away from the terminology. So I think that's quite interesting. They never tell you the good stuff either. They never say, like, Greta Thunberg's just like marched somewhere and changed this policy, or was lobbying in America and actually got a bill through. Like, they never say those things, which I find really bizarre. So what does being awesomely autistic look like? This is kind of like the talk I've kind of like trying to condense here for you guys now. So please bear with me if I'm trying to talk fast. Just kind of trying to just really condense everything to get through to you guys. So it kind of looks like this. Like, I would say that being awesomely autistic, somebody who's really thriving in it, is a kid who is like the best Fortnite player you've ever seen, right? Every kid who's obsessed with Fortnite. Every kid's obsessed with Fortnite. But people on the spectrum really dig deep into Fortnite. You can really get it. They're winning, like, they're getting like chicken dinners or whatever they call it, or they're playing Minecraft and they can make like the Taj Mahal out of Minecraft. And it's that type of thing where, the kid who can build anything out of Lego, it's that who they're using their talents to kind of like propel themselves forward in a very, very positive light. And I think that this stuff is really encouraging. We need to see more of it. And another thing, like, parents always say to me, like, oh, my kids, I get it quite a lot actually, because I get a lot of parents want to consult with me online, and they say to me, my kid's, he's obsessed with Minecraft and I want to get him outside to climb trees. And I'm thinking, well, not everybody wants to climb trees, what I mean? It's not like me saying, because you're a girl, we're going to have to go to dance classes or ballet or something. It's not, so I say to them, like, let them play those games, because by playing those games, they're learning social skills. By playing those games, they're learning constructive societal skills that are going to benefit them in the long run. It's how to construct something and keep it there and maintain it. That's a very good skill. So playing Minecraft isn't a bad thing. And actually, I did my dissertation in Minecraft. When I did my degree in chemistry, I actually created a teaching tool in Minecraft to teach people the hardest part of chemistry, which is a computational physical chemistry thing called molecular symmetry and group theory, which is like something crazy, but I loved it because I was able to build this Minecraft model, right? So I always say to parents, gaming is fine. Obviously control and monitor the amount of gaming that somebody has, but it's fine that they choose gaming or game building rather than going outside and digging up mud with worms and stuff. So it's not a massive issue that that they do play games. It's something that I wanted to kind of like really focus on as well. And like playing Lego and being isolated, there's nothing wrong with those things. Yes, it's nice to have social skills and socializing, but those things will come over time, I think, as well. And when you are comfortable in your own skin, then you are able to go and attend things like social conventions. So up until the point when I was about 16 or 17, I was really uncomfortable being me. So when I was actually able to be me, when my parents just like, oh, fine, I just learned to play loads of instruments. I sat down every day after high school and I just played instruments, and I learned to play about 8 or 9 different instruments and sing and stuff like that. And so once I was comfortable with that, then I was able to use that as my confidence to go and do something else. So don't worry, I think, too much about the kids when they're growing up and they're not as social as you'd want them to be or expect them to be. I think that will come naturally. So that's how that kind of stuff works. So if we don't encourage them in those things, then we'll never know how good they can be at them. Because I think a lot of parents say, like, my kid's obsessed with games, but I really want him to focus on like English literature and maths and science and stuff in school because he's going to get a really good job. And this is a big thing, right? How do people with autism spectrum condition get a job? So for me, issues with jobs. I was going to a job and I was getting like really triggered and antidepressants, and I had to take time off, and it's just a bad setup. And I'm thinking, what was going on? Of course, it was the environment, it was the lighting, it was the people, it was the fact that I was doing certain things. I wasn't getting my schedule in a certain order. I was not sticking to a consistent thing. They were tripping me about all the time, and I didn't like this, and this was really triggering. So I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm never going to be able to work a normal job typically. So then I decided to make YouTube videos, and I was luckily fortunate enough to really obsess over algorithmic changes in Google and SEO, and which is how you kind of get your videos to perform well, and how you make videos, how you create videos, how you create content, how you structure stories, how you edit cinematic video. And I got so obsessed with that stuff. I made really high quality content that content was able to be monetized, which made it a job for me. So then I say to myself, it's not about thinking that those traditional jobs and traditional manner of how school creates people to be like factory workers or whatever, it's not about that. It's about saying like, okay, so my kid's really good at games, well maybe there's a career in game editing, game creation, game coding. And actually, a bunch of my friends just play games on the internet and they get paid a lot of money for it. Actually, a couple of my friends are like multi-millionaires from doing it. There's a guy I know called his name's Jacksepticeye on the internet, but his name's Shawn. But he like creates content on YouTube, and he's just like a multi-millionaire and literally just plays games all day. And I say that's a pretty decent career, you know what I mean? So there's always opportunity, and there's always a way to kind of like home in on what somebody does and say, okay, let's just focus on that and forget the stuff that we're pretending that is important, because those things aren't really important. Like I said, I left school, no GCSEs. My English GCSE was terrible, and I'm a best-selling author, international. So you know what I mean? I think some of the people left with like an A in English probably would love to have a book out. but they never do because they're not engaged in that area, you know. So that's what I find interesting. Right. So the future. It's like, what am I going to try and achieve, and how do I envision like what I'm doing and the idea that I'm doing to take it forward in the future. So currently, like I said, I got 100,000 on YouTube. We're building a massive following right now. I think we're hitting like 7 million views on the channel. That means we've got a lot of people moving forward and taking this message to try and educate people. We're also doing small inserts of like snippets of information to educate parents and teachers on how, like, the flip side, like from the kids, like, so when I was growing up, how did I feel about certain areas? And so by putting this content out, I feel like we're moving people into a more understanding environment, and by doing that, the parents are getting educated and the kids are going to have a better future, right? So my message for like making making the world more accepting and understanding, I think it's helping, it's going forward and encouraging more people to go on YouTube and talk about their conditions or whatever, you know, they feel fit, because the idea is that YouTube's this non-biased platform that's going to judge you. Okay, yeah, you're going to get hate comments, but you know, you just dab them away. But you know, in terms of hate, everyone's going to get hate comments. You just don't listen to that noise, you know, you listen to the good stuff, because there's way more of that. But by encouraging more people to do it, more people are going to understand other people's perspective, because again, everyone says that thing, oh, you meet one person on the spectrum, you meet one person on the spectrum, everyone's a bit independent and different, and yes, they are very much so. There are common denominators between the whole thing. That's how you can form a diagnosis. But in terms of having information to change society, I think like the revolution is going to come when more people are going to put that content on the internet, which I find fascinating. And I kind of really want to keep pushing like this message of like, let's not think about the negatives, what people cannot do. Why don't we focus on the things that they can do and just focus on those things and kind of relax with it? I feel like a lot of people, like parents and schooling, they're all paranoid about wanting to get this kid to a certain level to do this thing. It's like, well, you just take a breath for a while, and then it's like, sometimes I take my dog out for a walk, right? And I'll be like, hey, Randy, we're going to walk right down the beach. And he just like wants to go on another path. I'm like, no, we've got to go to the beach, because I'm just like to walk the same path every day. But I'm thinking, I should give him a chance and let him walk to wherever he wants to go, right? And I do, and he seems to have a good time. So it's kind of like, why don't we listen to the people on the spectrum a little bit more than kind of like forcing them into this box that we want them to do. And I find that's the most interesting thing, especially with SEN teaching and schooling and stuff. They're doing a great job, but I feel like we just need to kind of dial it back a bit and just listen to kids. And I think that revolution is going to come where we just take a breath and go, okay, nobody's going to die here if we don't complete this sum, right? And we will eventually get there. I had no support in high school, no support in secondary school, and I still have a degree in chemistry. I also have a national diploma in music technology, music performance. Like I said, I'm a best-selling author. I've got a record out in Japan, got to number 5. I'm doing all right, and I mean, I'm self-employed. And that's just an example of the fact that I never kind of gave into the fact that, oh, maybe I'm not good enough to do those things. Because I did. I had those realizations like anybody else. And my parents were like, oh, Dan can't do this, and he's not going to be able to have a normal job, and he's not going to, you know, they worried about it. And I was like, don't worry about it, man. I'm all right. You know, I'm playing music. And so we can't play music forever. And I said, why not? And we never, this is another thing, we never think, like, everyone says to you, like, oh, you can't be an entertainer, you can't be on television, you can't make music, you can't be a gamer, you know, these things are unachievable. I was like, well, no, the internet has given that access to every single person right now. Like I said, my friends, you know, were like in bed sits or sharing flats with people, and now they're like multi-millionaires just from playing games. So the ability to actually do something fantastic is just down to the fact that you want to just let them like have that interest, encourage it, and I just love that stuff, and I think that like more of that, please. So yeah, let's not focus on what we may not be able to do, but celebrate and encourage what we can do, and I think that's a really good place to stop it now, because I want to do a little bit of a Q&A just so I give myself like 10 minutes if anyone wants to ask any questions at all. Okay, cool.
Can I go back to YouTube?
Yes.